My name's Cameron Holbrook, but really quick, what I wanted to, before I even start into anything, I want to tell a couple of really quick stories that I find interesting. So my dad farms about 7,000 acres in northern Utah. And there are two things that literally would drive my dad nuts. And so when I was a kid running around with my dad on the farm, it did not matter where we would go. We'd be at the high school football game, we'd be at church, we'd be at the park. People would always ask my dad. They'd say, "Hey Scott, how many acres are you farming nowadays?" And his response, without fail, was always a couple thousand acres. And I'd look at my dad, and I'd look at him cross-eyed, and he'd be like, "Dad, what are you talking about? I thought we were farming 7,000 acres. What's going on?" And his response always was, "It's none of their business." And I think, what's his problem? Why are you so grumpy? The second thing that would drive my dad absolute nuts is on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursday afternoons, you'd always see the white pickup trucks pulling into the farmyard. And I'd swear, my dad always just kind of roll his eyes. Here it is, another sales rep pulling into the farmyard, and he's like, now I got to talk to them and be nice to them for 15 minutes. I'm just going to go home 15 minutes later. This is annoying. And his response always, when they take off, he'd say, "They're not going to work for that company in a year from now. They'll be gone." And I think, what is wrong with him? Once again, why is my dad so grumpy? So the reason why I talk about how many acres do you farm, and the response being couple thousand acres, and I'm thinking, no, it's 7,000 acres, Dad. Like, you and Mom have sacrificed to buy a lot of that land. What's going on? Is because in the agricultural industry, and this is not unique to ag, everybody is always talking about market share growth and wallet share growth. And so I guess I better advance my slides. I'm too busy thinking about what I'm saying. And so everybody's always talking about market share and wallet share growth. And the reality is, I don't care if you've been a sales agronomist or a sales rep in ag for 30 years or 5 years. You don't know your grower completely. Even my dad's number one agronomist, who's been working with us for 30 years, Sherrill, and his son Justin, they sell my dad about 5,000 acres of wheat seed every year, and they think they have 100% wallet share. And the reality is, they don't. Okay? So I'm going to come back to that. Why is that important? DTN. A lot of you are familiar with DTN. It's a historical brand. Everybody's aware of DTN in agriculture, but it's, the weather stations that you've got out in your farmyard or in the branch office, or, DTN acquired Progressive Farmer, the magazine. We have a product called Profit X and Farm Focus, Field Vision. We acquired Farm Market ID a few years ago. So, but, some of these things are kind of has-beens, or they've been in the past. And so when I had the opportunity to come to DTN, and I, kind of got that phone call and, "Hey, would you like to interview for this job?" I'm thinking, honestly, I'm thinking this stuff. I'm like, well, gee, my family used to have that weather machine sitting in the farmyard that my dad would stare at every day, but okay. And so then as I learned a little bit about it, I started to think, well, what's going on in the ag industry right now? And I bet you, if anybody that can hear my voice, I'm confident that in the last 12 months, whether you've been impacted by the industry downturn, like a layoff, and if you haven't, you know someone really well that has. Because whether it's a big company like Deere, CNH, AGCO, Cargill, ADM, Nutrien, I could go on and on. They've been going through a downturn. And so that's, there's been a lot of layoffs. So then, that's kind of one of the trends is that, not only are we in a downturn, but I think a lot of us that are in the ag tech, precision ag, sustainability space, a lot of those budgets have gone down. So my question was, well, why would I want to come to DTN when we're going in, we're in the middle of this ag downturn? Well, DTN actually has been taking a lot of historical things that we have in place and making significant investments during the downturn. And it's been a strategic thought process to go through this to say, hey, as ag companies are down and they're cutting the non-discretional, they're cutting spend that's not like super mission critical to sales, DTN said, we're going to double down and we want to capitalize in this opportunity to be able to benefit from that. And so what we're in the process of doing is we're in the process of building out, and very, very, very soon to be launched, in the matter of days, not weeks or even months, what we call the DTN Ag Hub. And it's focused on 3 specific areas. So farm intelligence, that's anybody that sells to a grower. Doesn't matter if you're selling seed, chem, fert, equipment, insurance, lending. We're also have a grain intelligence hub within the hub, and that's for merchandisers and traders. And then the third is sustainability solutions. So if you're an organization that says, hey, we've got to have a sustainability play, we need to know what our strategy is. This is stuff that it's like, hey, you can leverage that. So what? Like, okay, there's hundreds of ag tech companies that are doing this stuff. Why would I even pay attention to DTN? Same thing for me when I'm, thinking about employment. I'm like, why would I even, what's so great about DTN? Well, the reality is for us that is something very, very unique. And I know that screen is ridiculously small, but on point number 1, we have a grower database of 2.4 million growers in the United States, not globally, just the United States. And for anybody that's done data in agriculture, that is a lot, because typically you'd say there's about 60,000 growers in the U.S. that really, really matter. So this is a database of 2.4 million growers that's got contact information, associated fields, what crops they're grown, how many acres they've grown, okay, and how many acres within crops. Why is that so critical? Because I go back to my dad, everybody always asking him, how many acres are you farming these days? And it's always a couple thousand acres. No, if you go in and you look up Holbrook Farms, S&M Farms, SG Farms, Cameron Holbrook, Scott Holbrook, it's all there, and and it rolls up. Yes, it's 7,000 acres. So when you're in that white pickup truck and that farmer's rolling their eyes saying, get out of my farmyard. You're not even going to work for that company in a year from now. Rather than talking like that 2-year sales rep that's dabbling in the ag industry and doesn't really know what a variable rate planning prescription is, you're able to walk in there and talk about, hey, I see that you've got 2,500 acres of fallow land this year. And you've got 1,500 acres in CRP. And last year you had 1,500 acres of grass hay, and you've moved that to alfalfa. And then you can start talking about, this gives you an opportunity to not only talk intelligently to increase market share if you're going after new growers, but to be intelligent if you're going after wallet share. Because I promise you, people think they know everything about their growers, and they don't. And it's a lot of times because growers don't want to share, but because things change over and over and over. So for farm intelligence, it's a solution that we're offering that is for anyone that sells directly to a grower. It's taking the database. And historically, what we've done is just been like a data dump. That you've got to be really good with data science or data engineering. So we're putting visuals on it, analytics, so that you can slice and dice it. And, and it's been pretty awesome. So the next area that we've got is sustainability solutions. So once again, it's leveraging the same database, but whether it's to CO2 emissions, CI scores, we have a cool marketplace where you can purchase outcomes as it relates to farmers. So, if you're not sure where to go to a farmer and you want to purchase a specific outcome, whether it's, cover crops or you want to achieve this or that, then that it's a super cool solution. And then the final area is just in grain intelligence, and I've got to whiz through this because my time's getting slim. I've got my little clock timer ticking in front of us. But once again, it's leveraging the databases that we have. And we source data from the USDA, government, imagery, markets, surveys. It's all over the place, and pull it together to be able to do this thing. So in conclusion, I appreciate those that when I said, hey, come sit down in the seats, that they came. But we'd love to talk more. I think when you think of DTN, if you're like, oh, it's that old weather system, there's a lot that's changing. We're going through a transformation, super exciting. And if you want to learn more, we'd love to chat with you. You can come chat with myself or Courtney, one of my peers, is here in the audience. And then we've got a couple other folks, Sid and Jeff, that are a part of the team and would love to chat more.